trickstabs are awesome. Not only do you get to fracture someone else's ego, but you also get to absolutely shatter yours when your opponent reads you like a book. Well, that's just mean. The concept of getting every single trickstab was first introduced to me by Sue Ravioli, and if you haven't seen his attempt, I highly recommend you to watch it. Here, however, I will be trying to do it a little bit more seriously, especially in terms of defining what a separate trickstab is, since what he used was a list in a website that can be edited by the public. Because of that, not only has the list changed, but we have also ended up with things such as the TRICKSTAB, which I literally don't have the power to do. So instead of using any public lists, I've made one by myself, with some help from quite a few other spy mains. We have divided trickstabs into separate stabs and stab variations. For example, a surf stab from a rocket and a surf stab from a sticky is still a surf stab, since in my understanding they're just variations of one another. But to keep the challenge more interesting, I'll be doing most variations of stabs as well. Also, most of the rules I will introduce as they become relevant, but for now all that matters is that I am only allowed to play TF2's official casual matchmaking or community servers with the same rule sets, and I'm not allowed to play in miscellaneous game modes since I think that farming medieval mode would just not be difficult enough. With all that laid out, I had nothing else to do other than get to work. That's a Matador. And that's not a Matador. And that's not a jump stab. As you could imagine, having so many options of different trick stabs to go for was overwhelming to say the least. And it's not that I wasn't getting the stabs, but rather when I did get a simple stab, I just ended up missing the fact that I did it, since I really wanted to get something cool at the very start. But that wasn't really working out for me. After joining another game and deciding to pay more attention to what simple stabs I was getting, I started speedrunning the challenge. At first, I crossed off some slope jump stabs off of the list, since they had players that were more than happy to chase me around. Thanks to the same players that were hunting me after getting stabbed a few more times, I got a switch stab as well, and even though it's just a Matador with W and S keys instead of A and D, it feels far cooler, because you make the opponent make a U-turn right into your knife. My next idea was to try crossing some surf stabs off of the list, and what better way to do it than queue into bread space for nearly an hour. I was so keen on playing bread space because it was the only map that I could do pumpkin surfs in. Pumpkin surfing was my current go-to strategy for trying to get an aerial stab. An aerial stab, for those unaware, is basically a surf stab, but you have to stab an enemy that's in the air. And not just in the air, but projectile jumping or getting launched upwards in another way. And since it's probably the most difficult stab to hit, I thought that I might as well just try getting one here and there, since it was obviously going to take a very long time to get.
3, 2, 1.
No chance. No chance I just whipped that. Fuck. Getting so close to arguably the most difficult trick stab in the game so early into the challenge absolutely shattered my heart. Since I failed this stab because of my own error and not because of anything else, it absolutely destroyed my confidence and my morale as well for the remainder of the day. That's why I decided to end day 1 of the challenge with just a few stabs being completed. For those of you paying attention, you may notice that I crossed off a sentry surf off of the list as well, but that is because I did this. If we're looking at all technicalities, it was a sentry surf stab. It wasn't the thing that I wanted to get, but I think I can count it. Since I was in the air as I got the stab, I decided to count it, but don't worry, I got a few cooler ones later on to redeem myself. The low morale from day 1 also carried into the next day of playing, since I was getting an unusually low amount of surf stab attempts. And since it was practically the only thing I was paying attention to at the time, I just kept playing worse and worse. And the attempts that I had, I absolutely butchered. Fuck, I just missed. It was a very easy surf stab as well. Oh my god, that was sad! Despite my struggles in the surf department, I was slowly completing some of the easier stabs. For example, I got to cross off 3 stabs by getting just 2 kills. Now some of you could be confused why I ticked 3 different stabs off by getting just 2 backstabs, so let me explain. The stair stab is quite self-explanatory since it was just a stab from stairs. But then the second stab that happens is a blind stab because the soldier doesn't see me jumping over him as he turns to where I should be. And it was also done from a prop, so I could count it as a prop stab as well. And don't judge me for it, I think that blind stabs aren't really stabs anyway, it's just a modifier that you put onto any stab if you do it while you're blind or when your enemy's blind and not something separate. But I decided to include it anyway. You could get the railing stab off as well. I probably would go on the other spawn instead. But I think that works just as well. After the railing jump, I got this weird stab. That counts as an air stab, no? I mean, he wasn't jumping or anything, but... And I don't know whether to classify it as an air stab or a drop stab or a mixture of both, so I took the easy route and classified it as neither, not to upset anyone. And also I was pretty sure that I was going to get more stabs like that later on anyway. Immediately in the next game, I also got to cross off an Understab thanks to a pyro that used me as a stepping stool. Okay, I got the TRICKSTAB. And then I got a clip I wanted to get at the very start of the challenge by dropping down the Badwater pixel walk. In the attempts prior to this one, I would always hit the ground before getting the stab since the enemies were trying to dodge my team, but that doesn't really matter anymore. What matters is that I finally got it. Remember how I said that I will be introducing new rules as they become relevant? Well, this time is now. Tell me what you think. Should Razorback stabs count? On one hand, they're still backstabs, so they probably should count, but on the other hand, maybe the sniper is playing more recklessly because he thinks he's safe. To avoid any debatable stabs, I decided not to count trickstabs from Razorbacks, and I wasn't expecting it to bite me in the ass as much as it did here. I didn't even have a reaction to that stab because after failing so many surf stabs prior to this one, getting it on a Razorback was just unbelievable. Hopefully it doesn't happen again. Right. In every single Razorback surf stab I got, the sniper was definitely not paying attention or was not even seeing me. But a rule is a rule, and unlike those Razorbacks, I wasn't going to break it. Another thing about the list, while writing it, we came up with quite a few trick stabs that I consider too random to even try getting. For example, the goomba-stomp surf stab is something you can't really do on purpose, and is something I've never really tried before. What you have to do is get launched into the air by stepping on an enemy player that is rocket jumping. If you time it well, you get launched into the air, and what follows has to be a simple surf stab. Well, that's as close as I'm gonna get to goomba-stomp, I guess. Oh yeah. After such a nice close attempt, I decided to surf the wave of dopamine quite literally. By that, I mean giving another chance to pumpkin surfs. Okay, that was nice. That was nice, finally at least something decent. With that stab, I had my confidence back, and if you have ever played Spy, you know that when going for fancy stabs, your confidence matters a lot. Since even if you have the mechanical skills for trick stabs, playing reserved or doubting your plays tends to be the main reason Spies fail. With that in mind, I finally got the stab that I almost never go for. A Cornerstab. That was a Cornerstab, 100%. Honestly, I never knew that I don't go for corner stabs. Well, at least not that much. I think it's mainly because I find corner stabs to be too predictable, so I look for ways to jump over the enemy around corners and doorways, not just try passing them around, which people can react to. To not waste the good mood that I was in from that pumpkin surf, I decided to play some Red Space trying to do the same exact thing that ruined my day last time. Yeah, I don't follow my logic either. Luckily, this time went way better. I didn't get an aerial, but finally got a simple rocket surf stab. I got a surf stab. As well as like 10 more pumpkin surf stabs. But to be honest, the highlight of the day wasn't even any of my stabs. It was the fact that my friend Tacos, a guy known for questionable reactions to stabs, got a nice surf stab as well. But 140, you can surf easily. Okay. Yes! Nice, I got that on camera from my end. I got that from my end. Keeping up the good mood from Red Space, we joined another game. This time it was Thunder Mountain, and things could not have gotten much better. At first, I shamelessly stole a kill from my friend by getting a backpedal stab on this demo.
That was a backpedal, okay.
Thank you, Sapphire. Then, just after changing sides and pushing to the second point, I finally got a jump stab from a building. Admittedly, it wasn't clean, but it's far better than the one I got a day ago in Frontier.
Technically that counts. I mean, it's not the way you would want to do that, but...
Also, I got this stab off of a teleporter, so we got variations of stab variations now. Awesome. And to end the day on a very good note, I finally noticed that I got a Circlestrafe stab.
Oh, that's a Circlestrafe. I still needed a Circlestrafe, that's nice. That's a TRICKSTAB. I farmed him.
I know that I was not planning to add a Circlestrafe stab as a TRICKSTAB, but I was looking out for one anyway, just because why not? Overall, this was probably the best day that I've had for a while, in terms of how well I did with Spy. Not only from looking at it from the challenger's perspective, but in general, since I got a very high score while having quite a bit of fun. And then the next day came, and I decided to cheat the system. I exploited a bit of a loophole. A reverse Matador, you see, by definition is a Matador done on an enemy that's chasing you, where you turn around and Matador them. Those technical of you may know that usually it's done by keeping the strafe key pressed down and turning around. Such a quick turnaround makes you strafe to the opposite direction, leading to a stab. Luckily for me, I don't care to get technical. So I just started spinning while approaching enemies, and finally one followed me right into a Matador stab. In my defense, I was a bit early with my turn while turning around, so I definitely had to change strafing directions for this stab to work. With the system cheated, I decided to revisit a stab I didn't go for at all. A counter-to-counter stab, or C2C. While it can be considered to be a part of circle strafing theory, or a variation of a Cornerstab, I think it's unique enough to deserve a spot, no matter how much I didn't want to try getting it. Earlier in this challenge I had a few questionable attempts, but I wanted to get a textbook C2C, and luckily after hopping through a few high tower servers I finally got one.
That was a C2C, 100%.
But seemingly I didn't have to, since the same day I got another one without even trying. Too bad. Next time I played, I finally got to revisit some serve stabs that actually mattered. You see, I was getting rocket serve stabs here and there, but whenever I went for demo players, they just weren't the brightest.
Are you not reacting to me on purpose, or what is this?
So yeah, here's a clip.
Okay.
I just serve stabbed that guy. He got absolutely found on.
Here I am, missing my circle. Here
Oh
you
my
are
God,
hitting yours.
That's the same guy that said 3 spies.
While we are on the topic of serve stabs, let's talk about a failure of mine. At the time of writing the script, I have yet to get a proper air blast serve stab. The only few stabs that I got from air blast were air blast assisted at best. The reason for that is that I have met exactly one pyro who knew how to air blast someone up during the entirety of this challenge, and he was on my team. Since air blast is very random and you cannot force someone to air blast you up when they don't know how to do it, I have decided that the stab I got works good enough. And if it doesn't, I'll make up for it with a few other stabs we talk about later. During the next few days, I was making some slow but steady progress.
Oh. Yeah.
It pleasantly surprised me since I was spitting off the melee surf stab for the very end. Remember my pathetic sentry surf back at the start? I decided to fix that now since I got a few games with engineers that were just leaving their sentries out in the open. What made the first sentry surf great was the fact that the heavy that got stabbed was a really good sport about it. The second one was much more boring since nobody reacted to my stab, but I'll show it anyway, just so I have time to plug the previous video about sentry surfing. With the list getting smaller and smaller, I decided that high tower was the best option for the time being since I needed air stabs and aerials. And also it was a likely place to find someone stupid enough to follow me down some stairs, but I'll talk about it later. What I got first was some air stabs. The first one was quite cool. I got a stab on a scout mid-air. Later I stabbed another scout completely by accident, and that just continued happening with any class in practically every high tower game that I had. Honestly, while going for aerial stabs, I got plenty of air stabs and surf stabs, and I'd say I've gotten much better at them than I ever was, but getting better was not on the list, so it doesn't really matter. With High Tower not yielding any results, I have decided to revisit Bread Space again, but the only thing I got was a face stab.
Nice.
Face stab is not a trick stab by any means, but it was probably the first thing that I included in the list because I think it's funny. On a more serious note, there was still one stab I was missing that relied on my enemies being very, very bad. The kind of not pay attention to the game bad.
Ay ay ay.
If anyone ever told me that I would struggle on the flip stab or the reverse stair stab so much, I would not have believed them, since technically the stab is so easy to do. All you have to do is make someone follow you down some stairs, but nobody ever does it. Why does everyone follow a spy up some stairs but never down? Is it some kind of high ground mentality that I don't follow or what? I tried for hours in High Tower and even in some Capture the Flag, but it was going nowhere, so I changed my approach. At first, I looked at places where everyone has to go down the stairs, and then tried to see if there are any locations that people could just walk down the stairs instead of following me. And then it clicked. I could just stand behind spawn doors and hope that people didn't see me with spawning wall hacks, and didn't look through the one-way window at spawn. So I tried and tried again. It was quite challenging and I even got some close attempts, but then after getting annoyed with it, I swapped to the proper invisibility watch, waited for someone not very good at the game to die, and counted the respawn timer to meet them at the door.
Yes! Oh my god, that was way quicker than I expected. It's my first game of trying it with the invisibility watch. Oh my god, I'll kill Bind out of happiness.
At this point, I was only left with aerial stabs, goomba-stomp surf stabs, and C-tap stabs. All of those stabs are difficult not only by what you have to do from your end, but also by how situational they are. No matter how well you surf, if there's nobody jumping at the time, there's no way to get an aerial. Similar idea with a C-tap stab. You can get the initial stab, but if there's nobody else around you, it doesn't really count. That's why, at this point in the challenge, I was ready for each stab to take days, if not weeks to complete. Since the start of the challenge, I have gotten some aerial attempts, but none of them seemed very feasible. I was either not surfing the rocket well, or I was just not reacting to stab opportunities that I absolutely could have gotten.
I could have had that, I could have had that.
Little did I know that playing High Tower just looking for an aerial stab would break me mentally, very quickly. On day 1 of trying to force an aerial, I failed a very painful one that I didn't react to.
No!
On day 2 it was even worse. Not only were the queues taking a long time, but also whenever I would find a game there would be no damaging projectiles on the enemy team, with the exception of the direct hit, which wasn't helping my case. The lobbies were so unsurfable that I got a 26 kill streak by just sitting on top of the tower and shooting down with my gun. Yeah, it was that bad. On day 3 my sanity was running low. I still tried some High Tower, but it wasn't working at all. It was the same story as day 2, that's why I decided to swap over to Harvest, a map which I usually don't play, trying to get some stabs. And even if it were stabs that were not going to help me with the challenge, I tried boosting my morale that way.
What are you doing, people? What are you doing? Like, they're not real, I'm playing with bots.
That didn't help me at all, so instead of throwing myself at the harvest walls, I decided to wait a few hours away from the game in hopes that people that I go against a bit later would be at least good enough to know how to shoot their weapons. That decision could not have paid off more than it did here, but you really have to see it for yourselves.
Oh my god, I just did that.
Not to say that the reaction you're hearing was me rewatching the clip from my demo, not the initial one as it happened because I'm kinda sad you don't hear me scream at the mic as I did when I got the stab, but maybe next time. After hitting the best stab I've ever done in my life, I was ecstatic for a few days, and not to ruin it, I decided to just take a break from TF2 before tackling the last thing I had on my list, the only trick stab that involves stabbing 2 players in a specific manner, a C-tab stab. The only reason I haven't checked C-tab stab off is because I was very strict with what counts for it and what doesn't.
Yeah, but I didn't hit the second one in time, so it doesn't matter.
By definition, a C-tab stab only counts if you jump off of the first player you stab and then land right onto the other player to stab them, without touching the ground. I've had quite a few close attempts or good first stabs of that C-tab-esque sequence through this challenge, but nothing seemed to fit the definition 100%. Until I came back to the game from a small break, after hitting the aerial, forgot to take Swiftwater off of the queue, and I did this.
Definitely this way to run for a C-tab.
Oh my god, the focus perfectly. It took me about, how long? 6 minutes this session. Okay, perfect. On one hand, it felt very anticlimactic. On the other hand, I was happy to be done with this challenge so quickly. Given my slow start, I was ready to take around 100 hours of spy to finish it, but to my surprise the finishing time of the challenge was mere 31 hours. That means I roughly averaged 1 unique trick stab throughout every hour and 10 minutes, which, if you ask me, is more than great given the difficulty of the list. In the very end, I'm very happy with how the challenge turned out, and I would like to see anyone else try to beat it, even if not following my rules 1-to-1. In the meantime, I will gladly welcome more spy-related challenge suggestions in the comments if you're interested in seeing more stuff like this. If not, back to guides we go. Also, if you're still here, I would greatly appreciate a sub since I'm trying to reach that 1000, but either way, thank you for watching and I'll see you next time.